One of our lovely video people once said to me, if you feel comfortable, you'll look comfortable on camera. I was like, respectfully, that is not true.
Absolutely. It's like, they say that too about just like with comedy where it's just like talk about what you know. And like, I feel like I do spend a lot of time talking about what I know. And then all of the comments are like, you're f***ing insane. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know, like there was like a pretzel pizza thing on one thing where I was like talking about how that was like one of my favorite snacks growing up and people had a meltdown about it.
I will say, you said that and immediately my partner and I watched that episode of Gastronauts and we paused and were like, what does that mean? And we like paused it to figure out if we could guess what you had in mind. But then your description where you're like, you put it in the microwave for 3 to 5 minutes. Like you're trolling us at that point.
No, I am now realizing that I think we had a microwave that just like didn't work very well. So, cause I'm like, I did try it again and I was like, okay, like 2 minutes is like a perfect amount of time. Cause you do want to make sure that the cheese goes like pretty translucent.
My terrible middle school snack was I would slice onions very thin and then just put a slice of cheese on it and melt it in the microwave.
I love that. Gotta have a patty melt without the patty.
Right. Which is like, I've not done it as an adult. I should try again and just see, but it was such a thing that I was like, I can't even tell people I do this because that's not like, those are not cool. Like a pizza pretzels, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Like
it was. And it was pretty cool, and everybody thinks it's pretty cool.
Everyone thinks it's great.
Nobody had a hard time with it, and everybody sort of was very normal about it.
I mean, that's a very good point because like it's been so fun like getting into Dropout because there's all these kind of weird corners where I feel like every part of my nerdy little brain is like, and this is also for thing, and you can like here's food and here's people lecturing about very specific things and very important people I genuinely love. Though I will be honest, it took me a while to get into because as someone who interviews people for a living, stressful.
Of course, of course. And designed to be stressful.
Right, like it's literally like, oh, your worst nightmare? Here you go. But like it must be really fun to be a part of that because there's so many different ways that you guys get to be creative and funny.
It rocks. It like genuinely is so like it really just is like the best job in the world. You know, it's like I think especially in that first season they really gave us complete free range to do truly whatever we wanted because they had so many other things going on and like for a long time Dropout was really like all hands on deck, like, you know, we're going to do our best and everybody is sort of like watching things, but they had initially designed very important people to be 3 episodes like in one essentially. So it would be like, they do like Anna Garcia's episode, Zach's episode, and Jacob's episode, and that'll all be like one, and then it'll be another episode. But then they had so much footage at the end, they were like, it's going to be 3 separate episodes.
Wow, that's really exciting. I will say the first thing I ever saw of Very Important People was on TikTok, and it was you and Anna talking, and I did not know what it was, and just thought, oh, this is a real interview with a Eurovision star that I don't know.
That was the hope.
Right? Like,
tricking people was exactly the plan.
I literally tried to find her music, and I was like, oh, okay.
You tried to find her music?
I did.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember what clip it was. It might have been, it couldn't have been Smack in the Dab, because while I quote that regularly...
I'm detecting an accent. Where are you from?
Europe.
Oh, what part?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Specifically on a map, where?
Oh, yes, right in the heart of the smack of the dab.
Oh.
American #1 superstar, maybe?
American #1 superstar.
I'm trying to think of what the clip was that made me think this is a real person and I do want to see what her music is because it just had such a Eurovision feel that I was like, no, she's completely competed. Like, she hasn't made it to the big show because I would know her then.
Yeah.
But like,
she was a runner-up.
You
Maybe
know
a third runner-up.
Literally about to text a friend of mine who knows everything about Eurovision and be like, Dan, explain it to me. And then I was like, oh, this is a comedy show. And if I had texted him, he would have shamed me immediately. You know those friends where you're like, no, you keep me honest because you're like, this was dumb.
Yeah. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. You gotta have at least like 3 of those.
Yeah. Truly, when people are acting up online, I'm like, where are your friends that text you and go, you need to stop?
You need to stop saying that.
Yeah, just...
I think that is it, because it's all bots, and then I think it's either children or people in their 80s mostly trying to find photos of their grandkids. You know what I mean? Who then kind of stumble upon something and they're like, this is against God.
Well, speaking of, because like it's so interesting to what, like my intro to Dropout was TikTok, and like eventually it was just like I need to see these things in context, and it's so fun, but also like you guys, there's such a reflexive nature in the way those shows work, because like the Game Changer episode where you guys were Shark Tanking,
yeah,
like you came up with hands down the best concept.
Producers, I think my pitch should be pretty obvious at this point. My pitch is that Brennan Lee Mulligan quits Dropout. In this video, Brennan will claim not to only be leaving Dropout, but also be leaving D&D altogether to focus on his first love, which is making American Girl doll shoes. Okay.
God bless ya. Thank
I mean,
you.
do you not feel that that's the vibe? Because I feel like that's not a controversial opinion.
I mean, like, I thought I had the best idea, which was why I pitched it. Sam said pitch 3 to 5 ideas, and I said I have one, and if you don't want to do it, then I don't want to come on the show.
But you're like Brennan quits, and I was like, this is amazing.
It's you take the thing that people love most and the thing they fear most.
Yeah.
And you combine them in one. And then Brennan sort of had another idea. He wanted to make like his pitch on my pitch was like, because as we were doing it, his big thing was just like he didn't want it to like mess with D&D too much or anything like that. So he was just like, as opposed to it being just quitting, going to do something that was like a little bit silly, so hopefully people would recognize that it was not like, a real thing. And he had pitched something, and I was like, I still, especially if I'm going to be the one pitching it in the episode, would love it to be in my voice. And so I ended up doing a bunch of research on what brand I thought was most likely to interact with the video. And so I narrowed it down to Sylvian dolls and American Girl dolls. And thank God I picked American Girl dolls.
They're litigious. Sylvian's litigious.
And it happened, that lawsuit against that amazing Sylvian drama creator happened immediately after the episode dropped, like right before it was supposed to come out. So I was like, thank God.
Oh my God.
As of today, I have dedicated myself to the craft and profession of making custom shoes for American Girl dolls.
I was not an American Girl dolls person, partially because of age and partially because of poverty.
Sure.
My parents were going to be horrified. They were not spending that kind of money on a doll.
It's a lot of money for a doll that most kids cut the hair off of. And then put
right.
in
And I was 100% that girl. Like, most of my Barbies were weird Barbies. It's what it is.
That was your parents knowing you.
Yeah, they were just like, absolutely not. No.
They were paying attention.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we know who you are.
You're too creative to spend this kind of money on a doll.
What a beautiful way to say you have a weird kid.
You know what I mean?
My dad was mostly just like, you just think differently. And I was like, I love that.
Yeah, it was a real eye-opener to me that other people didn't think like I did. It was just because my parents were like, yeah, totally, whatever. What's so funny about that is, like, did you come dressed as an American Girl doll? Yeah. That's amazing.
The day before, because initially I think, because I had, like, they allow performers and writers and things like that to pitch on the episode. So I had pitched this episode, and I believe originally Brennan was going to present my pitch. Because obviously it is completely centered around him, and I sort of have nothing to do with the final product. But instead, he wasn't able to make the shoot for whatever reason, because he's the busiest man in America. And so I then stepped in, and my only caveat to stepping in was I had to be dressed like an American Girl doll, and I left it up to the costumers. I was like, whatever you think you could do best with what you're working with here, I want to be an American Girl doll.
Because then, that was so funny. It was so funny to watch the videos and watch people who didn't see the episode responding and people who did see the episode. But then beyond that, you guys ended up on Google. Like, what was it like when searching Brendan Lee Mulligan made a shoe avalanche fall on Google?
I think at any point to have that kind of an impact on somebody's public image is like simultaneously terrifying, and as a comedian, the most satisfying thing that could possibly happen. Like, that's my sense of humor, and it always has been. My sense of humor is like a little bit of lying tickled in with just like commitment. You know what I mean? Like, and if people don't find something funny at once, maybe they'll find it funny 15 times. Like, there's a much higher likelihood they'll find something funnier down the line.
Sure.
And it was like there was like somebody sent me a thing a few months ago where it's like, if you Google Stanley Tucci's grandmother, like, I did a bit about him having a fake grandmother named Evelyn Tucci.
Evelyn Tucci, the paternal grandmother of Stanley Tucci.
And that pops up in his bio. I'm like, it just is a gift. And I hope nobody's mad. And if they are, I'm sorry.
Does it make you at all think, like, maybe I should be an Etsy witch? Like, my power is incredible.
I'm like, maybe I should be in government.
Ooh, can you imagine? Honestly, there was a whole episode of running for, like, it was like CEO of Dropout, not like King of Dropout. Or
the president of Dropout.
It was president of Dropout. And are you still president?
Yeah.
That's very
They
exciting.
said they're going to do another election at some point, maybe, and kick me out, and I say, good luck trying. Say, I dare you to try.
It's amazing. It's so fun watching your stuff because, like, whether it's Dropout or whether it's Ponies, the new Peacock show, like, you have such
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful transition.
It was fun watching it because I was like, I knew you were in it, and I purposefully didn't do a lot of research in advance. So I was like, I want to see, like, how this plays out. And you walk onto screen, and it's like, I feel like on Dropout you have a 70s sensibility in a lot of your attire, but this is like so high femme and such big hair that it feels like a Vic Michaelis character pushed, like, to this nth degree.
Oh man, that's so kind of you to say, because honestly, that was my first thought, especially like truly was for a show, was painted head to toe black and white, and the hair took longer than that process.
Wow.
The hair for Ponies. It just is like, it's art. It's like, she would like meticulously like spray, that was glued down. One time I fell asleep in that hair and I woke up and it looked exactly the same. It just was like, it was art. It was truly art. But it was like, it really did feel like such a costume. It was so easy just to like sink into it. And in no way did it feel like weird. It literally was just like, it felt like drag in the best way possible.
I love that. Cheryl is kind of like an antagonist for this first half of the season where these girls are like trying to be spies. She doesn't know that, and they're, in her mind, just bad at their jobs around the office.
Yeah.
There's part of me that was like, look, I get that she's a bitch, but she's not wrong.
Justice for Cheryl. I feel pretty strongly about that. She's not wrong. And I think is like pretty, like in any other work circumstance, and especially like today, she'd just be able to be like, yeah, you're fired. But she's just in a circumstance where she has no power to fire anybody.
Yeah.
She's too competent and has no power.
Yeah, I think it was really fun for me because every time she popped up, I was excited to see kind of like, how is her clear frustration in like being a woman in 1970s Russia working for the American government, where clearly tons of opportunities for women.
Tons of opportunities.
Like,
from cooking for the men to like doing secretary work for the men to just sort of dressing up, looking pretty.
yeah. And there is a point in there where they mention kind of offhanded, like, oh, she's a karate lesson.
Yeah.
I know that you are a black belt in Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Is there a chance we will eventually see your martial arts skills on this show? Okay.
Hoping.
Okay.
Would love that. That would rock. How much have you seen?
I've seen everything.
Okay, yeah. So like, this is kind of like a bit of this is a spoiler. So fast forward 10 minutes if you haven't. Fast forward. I'm going to talk about this for 10 minutes. So fast forward 10 minutes, and they're going to keep in everything they promised. There was the scene at the end where I go into Evie's room. There was a version of that got filmed because on set, David Iserson and Susanna found out that I did Taekwondo, and so that got written in as a way that like then maybe they could utilize it later on. So there is a version of that scene where a nurse comes in and I kick her in the throat.
Did you get to shoot that?
Yep.
Oh my god.
I went into stunt lessons for it.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
I got to do stunt training once on like a set visit just so that we could understand how it is, and I very quickly was like, oh, this could never
Did you
be my
film
job.
it?
They filmed it and sent it to us, and it is the if watching 4 film critics do stunt training, no.
Did you have fun?
I had an amazing time.
Great.
But I'm also aware that it was not interesting for anyone else to watch. Like, it is mostly me giggling. Wow, like we recently did a rage room, same energy, where like
Whoa.
that was very cool. But it's like,
What is your team building exercises that you're doing stunt coordinating training and then a rage room?
I wish that's what it was. It's just being an entertainment reporter is weird because
Yeah.
they're like, can we send you somewhere? You're like, okay.
What's the craziest place they've sent you?
That's a good question.
Under the sea?
No, I honestly don't think that I would handle. I feel like I'm way too afraid of like the ocean in general to pull that off.
It's
like
bad.
it's like you get sent to things and then they're like, you know, sometimes they want you to try something weird or eat a bug or whatever. There's a lot of
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, Fear Factor has been way too influential in ways that I'm not. We all know that. We don't need to get into it.
Is hating the ocean your hottest take, do you think?
I don't think so. I think people hate the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. My partner and I, when we went on our honeymoon, he was like, we'll go snorkeling in the ocean. It'll be beautiful. And I freaked out so hard that he came away with cuts on his hands because we were holding hands in a romantic gesture, but I was just tearing into his flesh. Yeah. And that's just floating off the coast of Mexico.
Sure.
But I have swam with sharks since then. I feel like I need to point that out.
That's pretty huge. Like in a cage or just
They're
free-
nurse sharks, so they don't care about you. So I
Nurse
was like,
sharks don't care about you?
no, it was very much the energy. They're like, they put out chum and they're like, okay, get in the water fast. And I was like,
They put out chum around you?
Yes,
I
yes.
hate that.
but like,
Do you want to know my hot take?
yeah, please.
No more boats. I don't think we should be doing boats anymore. I think we got to cut things somewhere. And if we're not going to stop using planes, I think no more boats.
Here's my thing. I do like when orcas attack the yachts.
Sure.
So I'm up for that.
One yacht for the orcas.
For like a toy, like a cat toy.
Yeah. We'll leave one super yacht out for the orcas. Of course, I'm not gonna.
Obviously.
I'm not gonna. But we'll no
We're
engine.
gonna deprive the orcas.
It's a row yacht.
I want to go back to Dropout stuff because it's been such a joy to just. It's kind of the thing I watch to decompress a lot of the time because like. It makes my brain go in directions that I can't predict. And
Whoa.
like,
What do you mean?
Like, so like watching Game Changer, it's always fun to watch and be like, can I figure out what the game's going to be?
Yeah.
And this writing on that show has just gotten sharper and sharper. And like 1 year has actually been something I keep coming back to because it's so funny and it's so interesting watching the three of you figure out completely different angles to the challenge. But also then it's such a beautiful culmination, because in the end, instead of it being about who wins, it truly was about the journey and how you guys enjoyed creating together. And, like, I think that that's become an undercurrent that I keep seeing in Dropout stuff. Like, Demi's comedy special I watched the other day, which has
brilliant.
And has a very similar vibe, where it's like, it's funny, we're having a good time, oh, we're making connections you didn't expect. And I'm laughing, and then in the end, I'm like, I feel like comedy can be a way that people put up a front, and they can hide behind that. And what I think is so interesting about Dropout is that's kind of the way in for a lot of these things, but then ultimately there are these moments that become so much more vulnerable and real.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really kind. I think that it's really lovely, because that is what we're striving for. I think, at least I can speak for myself, and I can speak to 1 year later, like, because we were given so much reign to do that, and we really, like, top to bottom, we're given a lot of freedom to design what that episode looked like, and that was exactly what we were going for. So truly, that means the entire world. And I think, to your point earlier, the accessibility of Dropout and the advertising via, like, TikTok and Instagram is, like, not new, but I think Dropout has done it exceptionally well, as a tool for advertising. But if you're only watching the clips, you'll get the funny stuff, but you miss sometimes the bigger picture. And so, like, truly, that means the world, because it's very intentionally done that way. So truly, that means so much.
It's also just because, like, Game Changer often works as, like, it can work as a one-off, but, like, that episode had so much past information built into it, and, like, things that were being paid off. And what was so smart from you guys' perspective, which I don't know how it does sound like you guys are much more strategic than, like, in like, how is this going to have a bigger impact? But, like, the Dropout fandom community was like, oh my God, from this point on, we will never know if we go to one of these shows from people involved with this, if it's actually a game changer.
There is in episode 6 of Ponies, there is a loop-de-loop in my apartment.
I noticed that. Is that?
Had absolutely nothing to do with it, and it's gonna ruin my DMs. I'm like, because in Heated Rivalry, there's a
I was okay, because I did want to ask you about that. I was like, that's too fringe. I can't, like, loop-de-loops exist, Christy.
I'm like, and I just there literally was the moment where I walked on set, I saw it, and I was like, do I say something? I'm like, say what?
Right.
Be like, hi, sorry, we gotta change the set design, this brilliant set design that Sarah did. Like, sorry, we can't use it. I was just like, whatever, nobody's gonna notice. And then, like, one of my first interviews I did for this, somebody was like, episode 6, there was a loop-de-loop. I was like, I know.
What's funny, because the Game Changer set is clearly like a throwback to the 70s, so there's certainly an element of that. But yeah, I've seen the Heated Rivalry thing so many times, and I actually have a different Heated Rivalry question, and I'm gonna pardon in advance because this is a little deranged.
No, please, I'm a huge Heated Rivalry fan, and Rachel, who's a PWHL fan, I got to sort of, like, connect with over Instagram with Liz, who's like a Canadian sort of, like, pop culture influencer, podcaster. She's wonderful. But they were messaging me back and forth, so I do know that she is a Dropout fan also, which is great.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I doubt that it had anything to do with the set design, but
she was like, we need to sneak in this.
She's so great. The books are wonderful.
I was watching the Jeremy Colhane one, which he plays Boris Kaminsky. Yeah. Which that episode had me, like, in tears. I was laughing so hard.
Me too.
But I watched it around the time I was also watching Heated Rivalry, and I'm going to say something that we are going to have to bleep.
Please?
But he makes the joke of that he also has a emotional intimacy with the crew.
Yeah.
And then he says,
the lighting guy, we sucked each other down and then talked about our parents.
and I was like, oh, he predicted the cottage. Was like that's how, like, I've gotten 2 online where that's where my brain went.
Sort of like, and then Ilya's from Europe, and then Boris is from Europe, maybe.
Yeah.
So that sort of is, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, in my head canon, Boris and Ilya have definitely had a time together.
They just announced Rachel's new book in the Game Changer series, which is also funny. It's all connected. There's a corkboard somewhere with red tape that is making a circle, I think.
It is very funny because it's such internet brain that I was just like, I couldn't get it out of my head. And it's like people keep being like, they're going to the cottage. And then I hear Boris in my head and I'm like, I that's not a thing I can casually say to
canonically.
I mean, it must be like coming up with these things. I know on the show you are also a producer. Mm-hmm. Can you tell about how involved are you in the creation of the characters? And at one point are you like, I need to step away so that I can kind of be live in the moment.
Yeah. So in the pre-production process, I'm down to know everything because often it's like we're dealing with mood boards, we're dealing with like, reference images and things like that. So it's easy enough to sort of be like, oh, I can sort of see like what the idea is. I know like the title. I help because I would say on the whole, like I know the improviser's comedy style very well. So like I'm like, okay, I think that this would help set this person up for success with this for XYZ reasons. But on the day, as soon as we get to set, I don't want to see finished costumes until they step on set. I don't want to know anything about them because again, it's like I don't want them to be married to anything that they say in the reveal room, because if it's like they have an idea and then as soon as we get on we start building something and they're like, oh no, this is a more fun path, or like I want to change it to this, or I want this to be a surprise and I want to get your reaction to it. Like I just think it allows for some more freedom. In general, I kind of view myself as like the head of the talent department. Like my only goal when people get on set is just to make sure that they feel like safe and comfortable and confident to take big swings or make choices or like take stuff back if they want to. That's I just want to make sure that everyone is having a good time because it is a daunting process.
Yeah, it's really fun to get to, like, I also watch all the behind the scenes things and just seeing, I mean, I'm a big Face Off fan, reality TV series.
I just rewatched, right, of course.
But also, I also like, obviously, the classic Face Off.
Yeah, and Travolta and Nick Cage.
Yeah, but I had to I've had to explain this to people because like I got my nieces into the show Face Off, and I was like, when you go home and tell your dad you watched the TV show, which they just went home and said they watched Face Off, and their dad's like, why are you showing a 7-year-old Face Off? Yeah,
okay. Yeah, sure.
Like, really, but they love like the prosthetic stuff. But I love it's so fun to me as someone who enjoys prosthetics to see like. To watch people see how it's changed their face. Jeremy also killed me because he's like, make me hot. And then he's like, what is this? But those eyebrows.
Stunning.
I mean, I know you guys, because they talked about this in one of, in the episode where like Sam is slowly tortured with his own devices.
Yeah.
But like you guys have put in for Emmys. What do you feel are the challenges there? Because I feel like, is it just that people are kind of like bound to the idea of what Emmy stuff is?
I think so. I think that like starting to let in specifically like a lot of these like comedy streamers coming from YouTube days and things like that means acknowledging a brand new wave of what film and TV is. I mean, like YouTube is the hands down biggest streamer. It's where like the most minutes are, and I think to like discount that as like not a true form of art means that you're missing so much stuff that's out there and so much like beautiful and wonderful and like handcrafted things. So I think it will come. I just think that it is, there's still like people in power that are holding on to an idea of like what is TV and what is like prestige TV.
Yeah. It's been frustrating from my perspective because like
I'm really curious your thoughts on that.
I mean, like I thought Game Changer last season, every episode was better than the last, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be it. Like this is gonna be their Emmys.
Well, they qualify for this season because we
that's
don't have
good
enough
to know.
episodes out. So we'll see.
Because like it was just the episode where everyone's pretending to be drunk. There were just so many concepts where. Like, it wasn't just about the twist. It was about, like, the people's relationships to each other became so important. And I was like, that's so impressive because I can't think of another network, except for networks like this, like apps, like, and these companies that are building themselves, where we're that, like, invested. And to that point, I think that actually brings us really nicely to Gladlands, because this was a season that they announced one person by day who's going to do it, and I kept seeing the fandom get so excited. I was personally really excited to see you going on to it.
I was so scared.
Sure, tell me about that.
Well, it's just, I think it's like, it is such a legacy, and like, Brennan being himself, especially within like the tabletop community, like it just is such a brilliant storyteller, and you start to like, especially as they're coming out one by one like that, feel the weight of like, oh man, like there's this thing that was like felt very special and was like very artistically satisfying, and that I was so happy with how it turned out, and now we're just like putting it out to the masses, and on the whole people can be very kind, but there's also people, especially in the D&D community, I know, that are very particular about like what it looks like. And I think it really was just going like, hey, you put art out there, and people having an opinion on it one way or another is a gift. It means people are watching it, which is great.
It's a very healthy attitude. I respect
that. I'd say sometimes I am able to stick to that better than others, but like it is, I do truly believe that people should be able to have discourse about art as long as it is not on my page and in my DMs.
Yeah. Well, can you talk to me a little bit about, I've seen that you were initially hesitant, which I get. As we were talking earlier about how I hadn't played D&D in genuinely like 20 some years.
Yeah.
And then I watched Dungeons and Drag Queens, I watched Dimension 20, and I was like, I want to do this again. So like now I'm playing again, but it was really for me, even just being like, I'm playing with like my partner and
Now you're
his
literally
friends.
wearing D20 earrings.
I converted very quickly. Yeah, but it was nerve-wracking because I was like, am I doing this right? I very purposely built a character that wouldn't talk very much so that I could find my way in and feel comfortable.
That is exactly it. It's literally what you just said. Where like, for me, I like knowing all of the rules before doing something. I like being very comfortable. That way I can throw away the rule book. I like knowing what the box is. And this was one where I was just like, I don't know that I know any of this well enough in order to play. And I know I've said this before, but like, you know, Brennan was just like, it's about storytelling. And after the first day of filming, it really clicked in. And I just like, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I could do this forever. Like I totally get how to do this. D&D proper, I think, would maybe feel a little bit different, but this like Kids on Bikes hybrid homebrew like really was so fun.
I'd love to hear about for you making the character of Hughie. Like, what were your inspiration points and what was your like hope in creating that?
Yeah, you know, like I had just been through like a death in the family, and I was like doing as you do, where you're sort of like reading a lot of material and consuming a lot about like grief. And like I read this actually Izzy Rowland gave me this book called From Here to Eternity. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all. It's wonderful. It is like a very anthropological look about like death rituals around the world, and it was the one thing that like really made me feel better, because it was like hopeful, and it was looking at it and it was somebody getting like excited about these different rituals, and I was like, yeah, I mean, like, you know, I think death can feel very isolating and you know, like a solo activity, but it's something we literally all go through. And like hearing about the different rituals, I was like, oh, it'd be really interesting, even in this like sort of utopic area, people still die and you still have to like figure out what to do. And I thought it was really interesting, the idea that like it's still a job nobody wants to do, but somebody has to do it, and like what is that person like? So that was sort of where that came from.
I love that, because the episode where he's like trying to say something, or they're trying to say something comforting to this child, I get that completely.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lie, and you want to say something important and profound, and it's like, what I have to offer is we're all going to die.
Yeah. There's no need to be scared.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna happen to you eventually, and you're gonna be okay. And it's just like, and I think there is a world where like Hughie really thought that was really gonna make this kid feel way better.
I do think there is that world. I've just seen Bone Temple, and without spoilers, I feel like that's the world where that's a message that works.
I can't wait to watch. Really?
It's so good. I've
Okay,
seen it
breaking
twice.
news.
The embargo's lifted a few days ago, but I like,
great.
so we're not, but like, yeah, I have been telling people.
Breaking the news to me.
Yeah, so good. We got to have Nia in here, and I got to just gush in person and just be like, I'm obsessed.
Come on, that rocks.
Yeah, very, very cool. I do want to circle back. I don't have a segue for this at all. I want to circle back to heated rivalry in that I know that, like, you know, you have a love for Canadian comedy and for Canadian TV and film.
Yeah.
What do you recommend if people are like, oh my God, I love heated rivalry, what else should I be watching?
Oh man, there's so many good ones. Honestly, like my recommendation would be pop on CBC Gem and just like start going through the catalog. Like I love like Working Moms, I feel like made its way down here a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like all the Baroness Von Sketch stuff is really fun, but truly like a lot of the Crave originals, a lot of the CBC Gem stuff, like truly just start popping around. And if you're not watching the Professional Women's Hockey League, you gotta start watching.
I'm now getting a lot of ads for the Sirens, which is apparently our women's hockey
Yeah.
team, and I'm like, okay, like tickets are going on sale soon. I'm gonna pay attention. So
it's a really fun league to watch. I do highly recommend it. The Women's Baseball League is coming out soon. So.
I'm more aware of that, but like it's been so cool because, like, for me, I grew up with the advantage. I don't know. I did not know certain things were Canadian. Like, I just grew up with SCTV and being like, this is the coolest show I've ever watched.
Did you see the Essex County show?
No.
Have you read Essex County? It was a
No.
graphic novel.
I'm gonna check this out. Okay, I'm gonna look at
Heartbreaking.
that. I know for you, like, I know you're a big. If you've said that you want Catherine O'Hara, she's like the dream.
Would be amazing.
What was like the first moment you were like, Catherine O'Hara, like really understood who she was as a performer?
I mean, like all of those Christopher Guest movies. Yeah, everyone is nodding. It's like it just is. She is like a revelation. I mean, is really good at playing characters that are unlikable on the surface, but like really have a lot of depth to them and a lot of heart to them, and is also just like is so funny and such a brilliant actor. Also, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that is, you know, it's gold. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm putting it out there. That would be an amazing episode. Like I like after I got through my initial like this is my nightmare as far as watching someone like having
And fair enough.
I mean, like, it makes sense. That's the drama in the show is the antagonism of it. But, like, man, I'm better at it now. But I was like, I watched the first couple episodes, like, I'm going to have a panic attack.
Yeah. My big thought on that and sort of, like, creating, like, a big character, like, a character with, like, sort of, like, a lot of quirks with that was, there was sort of, like, no real plan for me to necessarily be the one to host in the future. And so I said, what if I spun myself around and tied myself up in this so much that they can't lift the blinds without me being lifted also?
It's a good idea.
Sort of cat with yarned my way into continuing being the host of this show.
How did you find that suit? Because I feel like it's such a good fit for what you've created in that character.
Okay, just throwing this out there, not saying that it is or not, what would your reaction be if there was a different suit ever in the future?
I feel like I could adjust, but it's just that suit feels so, like, that Vic has this idea in her head of what being a professional like journalist looks like.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it would jar me a little bit. I'll be honest. Like I hate to be that fan that's like I'm not good with change.
No, it's like it's great to know. I'm like there's always talk of like do we do a new every season?
Sure.
There's a talk of do we do a new suit and do we keep it the same? And it always ends up looped back to the exact same place. I love the suit. It's like it is honestly unbelievably comfy. We have the exact same one from season one. I had literally brought it home with me because they were like you can keep the suit after the first season. Then they decided they wanted the same one for the second season, and I had to bring it back from my house. I'm wearing the pants from that suit in my Smarty Pants episode. Like it is, it's family. The suit's family at this point.
I love that.
It's been to family gatherings with me. Kind of my partner.
You've done so many cool things in the past year. I mean, like literally there's a point where you were shooting ponies while planning the 1-year game changer and reaching out to NASA.
I can't even talk about that. I can't even talk about that. Literally, as I am like trying to get Sam's head, because they wouldn't do the body, but they were like, it could be a personal item for an astronaut if it's just his head. And I went, great. And then we can score it, we can fold it. That's how Lou got the cutout to Antarctica. And then they were like, oh no, there's astronauts currently stuck in space. We're not allowed to do anything. There is nothing that we are allowed to bring up there anymore. It was I don't want to say heartbreak because that maybe seems dramatic, but it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, that must be weird where you keep seeing these updates about astronauts and you're like, I personally am taking this really difficult.
Yeah, the person that took it the hardest, those astronauts being in space was me. I think I was the one that had it the hardest. That's sort of like the byline is that, of the astronauts being stuck in space, the person that has ulcers from it is me.
Well, thank you so much for coming to this. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I really can't thank you enough. This is delightful.
My God. I forgot one thing I wanted to ask you, and if you don't want to do it, it's totally fine.
Please?
We've gotten everything we need.
No, I can't wait.
I do know that you said that your dream is to be in a disaster movie.
Yes. Do you have a hookup?
I don't, but I brought a big fan in case you want to give us a taste of what that might look like.
Yeah, of course. Okay, here we go.
And action.
Chelsea! We gotta change the direction of this tornado!
Great.
So that's right. The plot of this one is that we have invented a machine where we can sort of like put the tornado on a track. We just sort of dig a hole and the tornado we can redirect.
I love that.
We've miscalculated and we're in its path, so we got to redirect the
This
tornado.
is great. I love this. This is going to be next season of Dropout. We're making Twisters 3.
Your lips to the president's ears.